This whole month is going to be about stories. Stories in prospecting, stories in sales, stories in team building, and stories in personal development. We're going to kind of dig deeper into that concept of story sell and facts tell. And I want to start with prospecting because we always talk about prospecting the first week of the month. Here's the thing about prospecting. It is so important in prospecting that you connect with that person, that person and you feel like you have real connections. You should walk away from encounters where you feel that you can then turn around and make a sales presentation. Maybe you've even made a sales presentation in your first encounter because there's such a connection. You feel like an old friend to them. The person I learned that from was my mother. And the reason she was such a great conversationalist and is a great conversationalist is because she asks questions and she tells stories. Hi, it's Lorna Rasmussen. I'm speaking to you from Costa Rica. And what we're going to talk about today is, as I said, prospecting. I'm going to give you a couple of tips and then we're going to go deeper into it in the tips that are on social media. The first thing is try to make that person speak first. You ask the first question. The person asking the question is in control of the conversation. So you ask the first question. You are, and really what you should be, and I hope you are genuinely interested in what goes on in people. So you would ask an obvious question. I'll give you an example. Today on a prospecting Zoom call or a networking Zoom call, a woman said she was formerly a documentary filmmaker. Bingo, that's what I'm going to be talking about with her to begin with, because that's something we have in common. And we'll go from that thing we have in common. Maybe what you have in common is where you live. Maybe what you have in common is how many children you have. Maybe what you have in common is the kind of work that you do. But you find that common thread and you go down that thread to get to know the person. You then want to know how your product or service or your business opportunity would help that person, would be of service to that person. And you do that again, same thing, through a series of questions that give you information that they may not even understand you're trying to get. And I don't mean being an inquisitor. I don't mean, doing the third degree on them. I mean just having a conversation, finding out about them, finding out what they like, finding out what their problems are and their needs are that you can solve. And then you turn the conversation around, and it could happen automatically because they'll probably feel like they're taking up all the conversation, and they'll ask, well, what about you? And in that moment is when you can solidify the bond on a personal level and pique interest. Understand, you're not going to tell them about your product or service necessarily unless it seems like that's the right moment to go into a sales presentation. But you're going to pique interest and say, you told me that your son is having challenges with XYZ. I might have something that could help him. Could we get together and talk about that later? So you're piquing interest and you're setting up a follow-up with that person. If it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate to follow up with everybody, but I'll tell you what, if you want to have a great sales presentation because that person knows, likes, and trusts you, you do it with stories and you do it with questions.